today's video is coming from my apartment right now. Usually whenever I begin the video, I have the little intro part where I'm in the garage and I'm saying what I'm doing in the video, but I forgot to do that while I'm editing the video here, so I'm just going to do it here. I believe in this video I am getting the brake booster eliminator, getting that bolted in, and there's a little bit problem with the bolt pattern on it, but I think I got it figured out. And I didn't get the brake lines plumbed to it yet. Got to figure out that later. Other things done in this video, I do the rack swap, which is shortening that the part in between the steering column and the actual rack. And then, you know, get the rack bolted in and all that kind of stuff. Other thing is the motor actually gets in the car and it's bolted in, transmission's bolted in, everything's, you know, man. So that means I'm making the motor mounts, I'm making the transmission mount, and I'm welding all that up and getting it test fitted and finally getting it in the car for good. So that's good. I'm also getting the, in the other video I got the aftermarket oil pan, or not the aftermarket oil pan, the one for the 5M, which is a front sump oil pan. I tapped that, I don't know if I show that, but I tapped that for the oil cooler drain, which means I just kind of drill a hole and get the fitting goes in. And it's just going to drain, you know. It's not too anything like super duper specific, and so I just didn't include that maybe. What else? I think that's about it. Next video will probably be putting the core support back on, because the engine, transmission, is in the car. Doesn't need to come out anytime soon. Nothing big going on. So I'm going to put the core support on. Now, this is going to be temporary, so I'm going to reinforce it and reinforce where it's bolting to. Put bolts in it so that it can come in and out. Not welding it back on. I had kind of thrown around the idea of doing a front tubular, but it's just a lot of work and it's a lot of time that I don't want to put into it right now. I kind of just want to get this car done and like working. That's all I want to do is just work. It doesn't have to work well. Then I can, you know, make sure it works, put a car cover on it, put it, you know, in the back, and come back to it later and improve on it. All I want it to do is work. So, yeah. Anyway, that's what's going on. So, I'm gonna get to it and yeah, watch me work, I guess. Got some parts in recently. I'll just walk you through what I got. This is a brake booster eliminator from Chase Bays. This is the E36 steering rack conversion kit from Geargistic, and this is something else from Chase Bays, which is the clutch line from the master cylinder of an E30 to the slave cylinder of a W58 or R154, which is what I have, is the R154. So, right now, I've just taken the engine back out. I'm going to bolt this up, put the engine back in, see what kind of fitment I have, and pick up there. Here's what I've got so far. I put the brake booster eliminator in there. That's one by Chase Bays. So first off, it's not even the same bolt pattern as the brake booster. These 4 bolts, they didn't even line up. I can only get 2 of them in. It was sold as a direct fit to an E30, so I don't know what's up with that. Second of all, there's a little fork that goes on the end of this. I'll show you that. That does not even connect to the brake pedal. The hole right here, this hole, it's not big enough to go onto the brake pedal. So I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. I don't know if I got the right part, but I'm just showing you where that's at. So I took the one off of the brake booster. I put it onto the brake booster eliminator, and then it's not long enough to reach the brake pedal. So I don't know what to do about that, but it's in there, it's bolted in, and you can see I've got room now. So this is where the motor should be. It's not exactly in the middle of the engine bay. You can see I got a little too much room over there and not enough room over there. So I still need to move it over to the driver's side a little bit, but I have the room now. I have the room to move it over because there's room here. so I can move it over. And the amount of space is looking good in here. I can see where to put the motor mounts now. There's the motor mount from the engine where it needs to go to the subframe. So there's enough room there now. And same thing on the other side. I've got enough room. You can go there to there. The shifter placement is pretty good now. It's right in the middle of where it needs to be, where I wanted it to be. So that's good. Overall, looking pretty good. Front to back is looking very nice. You can see the spots where it's been cut, the front core support. So that is where the front core support is going to sit. So it's pretty good with how long the engine is. I'm expecting the front core support to be like right here. Enough room for a radiator and then some fans on the front of that, and then some the intercooler in front of that. So it's looking all right. The hood height or the engine height is looking pretty well too. I can go down a little bit more, but you know, if I kind of imagine that the hood's there, it looks like I can get some clearance in between there. I'll probably have to take off the insulation on the inside of the hood to make it fit snug. But overall, looking pretty good. I'll move on to the next step. Going on. So here's a car after the motor mounts. Sorry I didn't really get any footage of the actual creation of the motor mounts per se. I can kind of tell you what happened. So I took this chipboard, put it in there, set it down, kind of looked at it, made sure everything was level with the motor suspended in the air with the engine hoist. Then you know, the motor is kind of right here. I drew a line on it, cut it, put this in there again, made sure it fit pretty well. Everything was pretty flush with it, and then I took it over to the metal, traced it on the metal, cut it out on the metal, took the metal over here, put it up again, and made sure that it fit, and welded all the metal together, which is that. Hold on, let me get a better view of this. So this is the welding's not excellent. It's a little tough to get in there, but what's going on is there's the motor mount right there. There's the rubber piece. Then it's got a circular pad on top of it. Then it's got one side, which is sort of a triangle shape. Then it's got the other side, which is kind of the same triangle shape. And then all that is cut to fit to weld to this piece that is bolted on to the motor stock. So this is bolted on, original bolt pattern, all that. And I just welded in there. I welded up in there, if you can kind of see. Yeah. Anyway, that's all welded. Same thing on the other side. Obviously, they look a little bit different because placement of the motor mounts is just a little different. This one's actually, you know what? This motor mount's a lot worse. Don't look at this too hard. It's structurally sound. It just doesn't look very good. Those of you who are inexperienced at welding, the prettier it is, the better it is. Is usually the general rule of thumb. So yeah, this isn't great, but you know, whatever. So this is the fitment of the motor in the car. Got a little bit of space here. You can see the transmission there. Pretty good fitment over here. It's perfectly level, actually. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna say perfect, but it was pretty level with my leveler that I checked. And this isn't like, this core support is loose. I just kind of set it on there right now. It's not welded in or anything. I just wanted to get a good feel of how much space I got in between the, you know, the engine and this. And I got a little bit. I got a little bit to work with. Looks like there's some things that are going to be thin and in front of the radiator. Like, for instance, the intercooler. Intercooler is definitely going to go in front of the radiator now. No AC, obviously. Nothing to worry about there. Thin radiator. Probably not the stock one. Something that'll fit in between here, or something close to it. That's what's going on right now. I also don't have the transmission welded in yet. Kind of working on that at the same time. That's kind of the placement I've got going on with it. It's held up by a jack right now. Motor mount's pretty technical. The transmission mount a little less technical. You know, just 2 spots where it bolts to the transmission. That's all it needs. So it's looking alright. Here's the fitment with the brake booster eliminator. That's just turned. It, you know, it swivels. It's not something permanent. It's pretty good there. You know, that's the actual unit, and you know, nothing too much in the way. So I think it's gone pretty well so far. Once I get all this stuff buttoned up, fitment wise, I can start wiring, and you know, start hitting myself in the head with all that stuff. So that'll be good. I'll explain this now when I'm doing the transmission mount, because I forgot to when I was doing the motor mounts. So if you're familiar with an R154 trans, below the transmission on the tail shaft area is a little rubber piece, which is the mount. Then underneath that, it's got a metal part which bolts screw into, and that's where the transmission mount, the crossmember goes. And so I've copied the pattern off of that, and so this bolts onto the mount. Now, so that's sitting under the transmission. This is going to go up next to it, and it's going to weld onto it. So I'm going to make this out of metal, cut all the holes out, make this out of metal, and then I'll weld them together. And then on these parts, this goes onto the E30 around where the factory mounting spot would be for the stock crossmember. And on an E30, it has these sliding kind of studs that go back and forth, and so I'll be able to adjust it a little bit, make it a good spot. So that's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna go and get some metal, cut this out, and weld it up together, and then I'll show you the end product. Alright, so I got the engine and transmission in. They've been fitted into the car. I just took it back out so I can do the rack swap and modify the rack. Let me go grab the transmission mount under there real quick, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I've got transmission mount here. This part, I'm going to clean this up a little bit, these holes, but this bolts to the mount, and then these bolt to the car. And I was going to add another piece and do the same thing, but it seems to be holding the transmission just fine. I might do it later, I don't know. So that's how I built that. And here is the motor mount. Motor mount's a little bit more tricky. This black piece right here, this is the stock motor mount that bolts onto the 7M. And I made some, as you can see, a piece of, I think this is 1/4 inch. Welded this onto this side of the motor mount off of the motor. This is the driver's side. And then I used the stock E30 rubber. And I'm putting, I'll have polyurethane, but this is just so I can get this test fitted. And so I made that metal pad, and that goes on top of here. So this is the all stock fitment on these, and so it just bolts right up to that, and it fits pretty good. So no problems, no worries there. This took a little bit of time, but it virtually cost like, I don't know, maybe $50 for the metal. If that. So. And it holds, pretty sturdy. Won't have to worry about that. Right now, I'm going to clean this oil cooler outside and inside, and get it ready to hook up to the new oil pan, because the new oil pan didn't come with a spot like a bung or anything. So, you know, I'll drill it and tap it and put a drain for it, for the oil cooler. And then right after that, I'm gonna do the modifications to hook up the I think this is an E36 steering rack onto the E30 column. You just have to get the garagistic kit and shorten it. There's a bunch of videos if you really care to figure out how to do that. You can find them somewhere else. I'm not really gonna dive too much into it. So that's what I'm doing right now. So today I pulled the motor back out and was hooking up all the steering components after I modified it for the E36 rack swap. So it's all bolted in and everything, and the racks all fitted and stuff like that. So and it turns the 3.7 or however much it's supposed to be. So that's good. I can put the motor back in. Next I need to get the oil pan gasket and clear the oil pan of debris and all that kind of stuff that was made from tapping the oil pan for the oil cooler return. Well, that about wraps it up for today's video. We got the motor and transmission mounts and crossmember all made and bolted in, and so the motor and transmission's in. Got the rack swap done, so big accomplishments there. Next video will probably be the oil pan, like I was talking about, oil pan gasket, and then I can finally just leave the motor in the car for good for a while, and then start on the core support, reinforcing that and bolting it in and getting it all, put back on. The front of the car just put back on, and getting that radiator fitted, and kind of, also kind of figuring out which one I need to get. So that's about it for this video. So feel free to like, share, comment, and subscribe. See ya.